Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 Series Rescue the Rockies. And the first half of this 2030 season has gone pretty well for the Rockies. A 48-33 record, and we are first place in the National League West. And we happen to have the best record in baseball. So given that we've been without our superstar shortstop and our number 2 starter all season thus far, the fact that we're on pace for 96 wins is certainly something that I think is a victory. Mentioned in the comments to the last episode that even if we have a slightly losing record of 40-41 over the second half of this season, we'll get to 88 wins, which probably gets us in the playoffs for a 5th straight season. And with Lopez not too far away and Adile Amador starting a brief rehab assignment today, I think if we stay healthy, hopefully we can do better than just be around 500 the rest of the way. We have made one change to our lineup since the last episode when we did our mid-season review. I don't think this will surprise a ton of people, but we pulled the young outfielder Brandon Tunick, who's hitting just .216, the Rule 5 acquisition, out of the starting lineup against right-handed pitching, and we moved Charlie Condon, who's been hitting better of late, 8 home runs and 26 ribbies and 120 at-bats, into the lineup. That strengthens our defense at first base a little bit, moving Condon to first and Tyler Soderstrom to DH. But it will weaken our defense in right field with Tunick going to the bench and Gus Nieves moving from DH to right field. But feel like hopefully that will generate a little more offense for us, and with Amador coming back in a few days, we'll revisit what that lineup should look like shortly, assuming that his rehab assignment in AAA goes well. Couple other brief things to talk about here at the start of the episode. Zach Bartell brought up the good point that he wishes that there was run differential on the standings page. Would be interesting context to think about. Totally agree with that, but unfortunately there's not any way that I'm aware of to modify it. Looking at the expanded standings, though, our plus 57 run differential is the best in the American League. A lot of competition, or the best in the National League. A lot of competition, though, with the Dodgers at plus 43, the Pirates at plus 49, and the Braves at plus 43, not far behind us. Interestingly, the Marlins, who were having a great season not too long ago and still are 6 games above 500, are minus 33 in terms of their run differential. The best run differential in baseball, the second place team in the AL East, the Baltimore Orioles at plus 65. The Yankees, sadly to me as a Yankees fan here in 2030, by far the worst team in the AL East. Couple other comments to the last episode that just want to talk about briefly here. Taking a look at our minor league system and our top prospects, up to ranking 5th overall, which is nice. Looks like the young starting pitcher Leo Martinez, who we talked about last episode, is rocketing up the charts, which is great to see. Got a suggestion from YME943 to consider perhaps signing our young outfielder Dean West to an extension. He's a solid-looking potential hitter, very good speed, and good outfield range. He's been slightly above replacement level for us this year. Given that he's almost 26 years old, I don't know that he's going to reach his full potential, and he is looking for a little more than I'd like to pay. So with 3 of our top prospects being outfielders in AAA, Kevin Roberts, who we're playing at first base now just to perhaps prepare him for a eventual move in his 30s to that position, but he's really an outfielder. I don't think we're going to make an offer to West right now, but we did look at what these three top prospects, Kevin Roberts Jr., Trent Clausen, and Ryan Stone, are looking for. Not surprisingly, Roberts Jr. is a top 10 prospect looking for a massive contract. Trent Clausen also looking for nearly as much as Roberts Jr., which we don't love to see. But Ryan Stone was pretty reasonable in his demands, and he's probably the closest of the three to being ready for the major leagues. Having a monster year in AAA, batting .407 with 11 doubles, a triple, and 6 homers in 118 at-bats. 174 WRC plus. I don't think he's going to be a superstar at the professional major league level, but he looks like he could be a respectable left fielder for us defensively. Really positive influence in the clubhouse with some of his personality traits, including the high work ethic, above average speed, an outstanding sacrifice bunter, and a useful bat for the UVA product. Also pretty dramatic righty-lefty splits as a left-handed hitter. Looks like he could be a very good offensive player against right-handed pitching. At this point, he's borderline unplayable against left-handed pitching, though, and I don't know that that's going to improve. But Stone, not looking for crazy money. He was looking for about $66 million over 10 years. We've got an offer out to him to get him for a little less than an average of $6 million a year for the next 10 years, which includes, which would start next season. So he's not even on a major league contract yet. So essentially that would take us through his mid-30s, through multiple free agent seasons. And as I mentioned, with his platoon splits and his overall skill, I think he could be a sneakily useful bat for 120 to 135 games a year, starting against right-handed pitching. So from that perspective, we'll see what happens with this offer that we've made to Ryan Stone. And one last thing with the prospects, both YME943 and Undercover Boomer suggested potentially moving on from shortstop Matt Waters, our 24th pick overall a year ago. He's listed as the number 52 prospect in baseball, but our scout has definitely soured on him. The OSA has not, so they made the good suggestion to maybe think about shopping him right now if we really believe that our scout is better. Unfortunately, since Waters has not yet had a year with us, not eligible to be traded yet, but that will be changing in just about a week because the draft, which is going to be, at least the run-up to the draft, is going to be our primary focus in this episode when we see who's available for us with our first-round pick and then likely available for us with our supplemental first-round pick. That'll be happening in just 6 game days, so we'll take a look at that good suggestion in the not-too-distant future. And unfortunately, we lost 2 out of 3 to the second-place Dodgers. Had to salvage a 1-0 victory yesterday. A gem from Braden Nett, who's leading the National League in wins, runs his record to 11-4. And we were temporarily out of first place after losing those first 2 games of the series. So half a game lead for us now on the Dodgers here in the National League West, and we still are clinging to the best record in baseball here as we head closer and closer to the 2030 draft. And Adael Amador, while we were losing to the Dodgers, has completed his rehab assignment in AAA. We're going to need to find a spot on the roster for him. Likely moving on from Max Acosta, who we signed to a minor league free agent contract this year. He's hit just $173 in 81 at-bats, and he's not a dynamic defensive player or dynamic on the base paths either, although his base running skills are decent. Shopped him to see what was out there. All we can get is an expensive player in return. Ian Happ is still a bat that could help us. He's been a league average offensive player this season for the Padres, but he's making $5 million. That's not a number we can take on at this point. But if the Padres were willing to keep his entire contract, which I don't think they will be, then might as well roll the dice. But not the case. We wouldn't have to necessarily add in a great player to get the deal done. Obviously, there's definitely transactions we could do to get them to keep the full 100% of Happ's contract, so that's definitely manageable for us. The question is that would necessitate another move from the active roster, and I would just have to think about what that is. It would have to be a corner outfield / first base type to make it worthwhile, but adding in a solid professional bat for a very low price would not be the worst thing for us. And I just don't think Happ is enough of a potential difference maker to make the trade. With Acosta being traded away, we need to keep David Hamilton as a utility infielder. We could send Charlie Condon down, but as I mentioned, we just moved him to the starting lineup. He's hitting better of late, and he's younger and better defensively from Happ. The other options would be to release Brendan Tunick, who, although we've taken him out of the starting lineup, I think there's still usefulness here with his defense and his speed and his personality. Or sending our starting center fielder, Dean West, down to AAA, which we're not going to do. So we'll ultimately just waive in DFA Acosta. I can't imagine there's going to be too many people picking him up, so it's quite conceivable that he could just end up in AAA for us. And we have waived and DFA'd Acosta. Amador is back. He's going to play third base for us against righties, second base for us against lefties. So he's going to step right back into the lineup. His rehab stint was not particularly useful. He went 0 for 8, started 2 games, played in 3 for AAA Albuquerque. But the hope is that that shook most of the rust off. Definitely want to get him back into the lineup as soon as possible, since he was having a very fine season with a 128 WRC plus before he got hurt. So good to have Amador back, and hopefully that will be a little boost for the offense in the coming weeks and months. And I did neglect to mention that when I talked about the offer we made to Ryan Stone, we also made an offer to our young left-hander, Wellington Herrera, who's been our closer for the last couple of years. 5 years, $23 million. I think that's a pretty good deal for him. He's an older guy for someone who really just established himself as a major leaguer 2 years ago. But his ERA has moved from 4.09 to 3.39 to 1.59 over the 3 fullish years he's spent in the majors with us. Don't love, as those of you who have followed me over the years know, his below average control, and he has walked 19 batters in 39 2/3 innings this year. But with the numbers that he's looking for, I think that that's a good reliever for us to lock up through his arbitration eligible seasons and the beginning of his potential free agency into his early 30s. So hopefully we'll get that deal done as well. And the last thing between us and the draft is 3 games at home against the Giants. Hopefully we can win at least 2 out of 3 and take a second consecutive series this month against San Francisco. And Wellington Herrera did sign the offer that we made to him, and small increase in fan interest. guessing a small increase might mean we move from 49 to 50. Yes, boy, I'm starting to understand this game well. But good to have Wellington Herrera around for the long term, or not the long term, but the medium term. Take a look at that extension. As I said, I think it's pretty reasonable, particularly if he remains our closer. $2 million, $4 million, and $5 million for his 3 arbitration years that he's headed towards, and then $6 million each in his early 30s to buy out a couple of potential free agent seasons. And we also did win the first game of the series against the Giants, so a solid day here on, I guess it was yesterday, July 8th, for our Rockies. And then the signing of Herrera today. And we did end up taking 2 out of 3 against the Giants, 1-run games in the first 2 where we won and then lost, and then a 10-0 rout. Isaiah Shader with a nice start. We had 3 runs in the first, run-scoring double from Soderstrom, and then a 2-run homer from Amador. So good to see him hitting in his return. And then a huge cricket number, 7 runs in the bottom of the 5th. Tunink with a bases-loaded double, and Condon with a 2-run homer. So really nice to see that production. Shader, 2 hits, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts, allowing no runs over 5 innings. And Summers and Soto each provided us 2 innings of scoreless relief, and they each struck out 4. So a really nice performance there by the Rockies as we get ready for the draft. Taking a look at the standings, we're now a game and a half up on the Dodgers, 51-36 record, and it's still the best in baseball. The Orioles at 50-38 are a game and a half worse than we are, and the Dodgers are our closest competition in the league, also a game and a half behind us in the division, as we talked about. Gus Nieves still second in the league in homers. Chandler Simpson still running away with the league lead in steals. Braden Nett still leading the league in wins. And the newly signed Wellington Herrera leading the league in saves. And as we prepare for the draft, Wellington Herrera is no longer our most recent signing. Ryan Stone did sign that deal that we put in front of him. 10 years, $59 million, so he'll be making the major league minimum this year when we likely promote him to hopefully give us a boost as a September call-up, given that we do think he can handle right-handed pitching at the major league level pretty well at this point. May not even wait that long if we have some struggles out there. $59 million, as I said, over 10 years, structured in a way that I think is pretty protective of us. Obviously bought out his minimum years and his arbitration years in several free agent seasons, the last 2 years in his early to mid-30s, team options at $8 million. So even if he ultimately just ends up being a platoon guy for us, he's a platoon guy with a left-handed bat who's going to be playing much more often than not against right-handed pitching. And our hope is that even though right now he's an above-average contact hitter, slightly above-average gap power, and average home run power with a slightly below-average eye against righties, when we look at his potential, we think he can potentially improve those skills a little bit going forward and perhaps be an even more effective platoon outfielder for us, likely a starting left fielder. Looks like somebody who could be batting. There's just options for him. I mean, the eye is not ideal, but could I see him as a number 2 hitter for us with his decent speed, good contact ability to drive the ball into the gaps? Conceivably, if he ends up with strong splits, he could even be a 3 hitter, maybe a 5 or 6 hitter for us against right-handers. Not necessarily ideal home run power for some of those spots, but with plus contact, plus gap power. Definitely feel like there will be some options for Ryan Stone in the coming years. And before we tackle the draft, we'll take a look at the trading block. Definitely some interesting players out there right now. You can see that we've got Chandler Simpson, among others, on our team, including Charlie Condon on the trading block. Haven't really gotten much, if any, interest on those guys, but with the young outfielders on the way and Simpson set to turn 30 this offseason and make around $7 million next year, as nice a year as he's having for us this year, and it's definitely been a huge bounce back year to get that average up to 283 and the on-base percentage up to 340. If someone were to blow us away with an offer, we'd certainly have to think about it. O'Neill Cruz could definitely be a bat that would help us. He's making $21 million, although 35% of it was retained by the Pirates when they traded him to the Cardinals. So not making quite that much, but still certainly not something that we can fit in our budget right now. Not surprisingly, Gus Nieves would be the only way to bring O'Neill Cruz on board. If we try to get the Cardinals to retain everything, clearly they're not that eager to do that. So, if we wanted to just get Nieves' future money off the books, we could certainly rent O'Neill Cruz, but I tend to think that there's going to be more options than a rental of a player to get Nieves off the books this offseason if that's something we wanted to do. So don't know that O'Neill Cruz is really possible. Zach Neto with the injuries in our infield could be interesting. Don't love that he's only a shortstop at this point. We probably want him to be a little more versatile than that if we brought him on board. But we could definitely use another accomplished right-handed bat, and he's someone who the Angels retained 80% of his salary for this upcoming season when they traded him to the Phillies. So he is a much more palatable price to bring on board. You can see have to give up a very big-time player or prospect to make it happen. If we have the Phillies retain all of his contract, slightly smaller list. Definitely could see a scenario developing if we have an infield injury over the next 3 weeks where someone like Neto might be a trade that we need to make, but don't necessarily think that there's anything imminent. Ian Happ, who we talked about not that long ago, also out there as well. Taking a look at some of the top pitchers who are on the trade block, Mason Miller, who was a free agent just this past off season, I believe, already on the trade block. Yeah, he was signed to a 1-year deal by the Mets for $26 million, and they're already looking to deal the outstanding closer. Logan Gilbert, if we wanted to bring an accomplished starter on board, certainly could help. 4-6 with a 2.90 ERA for the Mariners this year. He's actually signed for next season, so bringing him on board with his guarantee for next year would kind of defeat the purpose to an extent of us trying to get out of Pablo Lopez contract. Nieves, the only one who can get the Logan Gilbert done. I think that's largely because of money. If we had them keep 50% of Gilbert's contract, we'd also could put Drew Romo into the deal. Don't know that we make that. I'm assuming a rental of Mason Miller is going to be very expensive. Actually, the Mets gave him a no-trade clause and blocked this trade, so doesn't seem to want to go to Colorado, but we'll spend more time offline looking at some of the different options available. We've got about 3 weeks till the trade deadline. But the focus now is going to be to pivot to the draft. And as I mentioned at the start of the episode, we got a first round pick and a supplemental first round pick. We'll be picking 28th overall. And then our supplemental pick for the departure of Austin Wells is the fourth supplemental pick. So we'll also be picking number 38 overall on top of number 28. Taking a look at the draft pool, have definitely struggled in this version of the game to get more than high scouting accuracy on a small percentage of the players since I turned off the draft combine. I assumed turning off the draft combine would kind of perhaps make there be a boost to the scouting that you were doing away from the draft combine, but it doesn't necessarily seem to be happening that way. I've got a good investment in scouting, as you know, $15 million. And when we look a little more deeply into what we're doing with scouting, putting over 30% of the pool into amateur scouting, I am thinking about, typically that's already a little higher than I run. I'm actually thinking about perhaps moving it and equalizing it with international scouting going forward to maybe give us a little more bang for the buck as far as what we can do with the amateurs. But when I think about the rookie draft and the draft pool, obviously we're doing scouting of all of these players. You can see we can get to average throughout the whole pool, and we even have some guys who we got to high accuracy on that we didn't devote any special attention to. Typically, when we get the initial reports from our scout, in addition to just the normal scouting that happens in the background with the pitcher or with the batters, actually I'm looking at the batting view with the pitchers now, but with the batters, I'll typically regularly scout, which means 3 or 4 times after the pool comes out, kind of the top prospects in the case of hitters, guys with 60 plus potential according to our scout. In the case of pitchers, similar. Also, we'll sometimes get into the 55 plus guys. And even with that much more intensive scouting, we've got high scouting accuracy on maybe about 20-25% of the players, which certainly is not optimal. But it is what it is at this point, and we are going to get the draft underway. And the draft has started, and our Rockies are on the board with the 28th overall pick, the number 1 overall pick by Miami, catcher Eric Wiedemann out of Towson University. Looks like a respectable defensive catcher who could have a interesting major league bat, albeit not with a ton of power. Catcher was also picked number 2, Jason Thompson, to the Tigers organization. He's probably who I would have gone with. Only a high school player, but he's durable, looks much better defensively, and I think the bat here with plus contact and plus home run power, if he reaches his full potential, Pist Thompson is a little more interesting to me. Ton of catchers going in this draft. Jesse Mercer went 11th overall. Chad Payne 18th to the Phillies. Josh Hill 19th to the Yankees. So 5 catchers taken in the first 27 picks. Our number 28 pick, let's take a look at some of the top recommendations of our scout, some of the top players in the mock draft, and then a few others. Shortstop Troy Dufer, 20-year-old out of the University of Central Missouri. Looks like a very good defensive prospect. Like the durability, high loyalty and work ethic, although low baseball IQ. So probably not going to be expecting any flip plays from Derek Jeter with Dufer as far as his positioning. Looks like an outstanding contact hitter with plus gap power, the home run power, and the eye, both acceptable. We do need infielders in the organization, given that we've gone with pitchers in the IAFA pool as our primary focus each of the last 2 years. I'd say that infield remains a priority for us, but as we talked about earlier in this episode, we perhaps reached a little bit for an infielder with our first round pick last year, and he's already a guy that we might consider moving on from. Starting pitcher Victor Blade Esquivel, left-handed pitcher. I think his velocity can get to the mid-90s. Good stamina, outstanding at holding on runners. Potential 5-pitch arsenal. And we think his stuff, his movement, and his control could all be above average. Some of you know that a high school pitcher with this good profile, not looking for a ton of money at $2.6 million, it's below slot, is definitely going to be an attractive option for me to consider. Another infielder, shortstop Josh Summers, high school player out of New York. Like the durability, the glove is not particularly interesting to me with below average error and arm ratings, but a very interesting potential bat for the left-handed hitting infielder. 5'11", he's not an ideal first baseman, not an ideal corner outfielder, so he, in a way, is kind of a man without a position. Not a prototypical DH bat with that lack of power, but clearly if he really reached his full potential with 80 contact, 65 gap power, and a 70 eye, you could play him as a different type of designated hitter with those type of skills. No guarantee that he gets there, but certainly an interesting prospect. And the last top recommendation from our scout, third baseman Danny Colon, really good contact hitter, kind of average at everything else, not a ton of speed, not great defensively, but at least with the range and arm being above average, he'd be playable at third base, could also become a first baseman. Very borderline left fielder. He's a potential two-way guy, but looking at where we think his stuff and his control ratings are, not really a huge axe to have him as a pitcher and a two-way guy. Some negative personality traits for Mr. Cologne as well. But some interesting prospects out there for us to consider. I think my two favorites are probably the first two that we talked about, Dufer and Esquivel. Center fielder Phil Dingwell was expected to go 7th overall in the draft, and he's still around. Pretty similar profile to a lot of guys that we've drafted over the years. Looks like a good potential corner outfielder who could also play center field, and an interesting potential bat for the 18-year-old. Third baseman Ian Beck, high school player who was projected to go 10th overall, has a really nice arm at third base. Going to make some errors there, but can probably play a competent third base. He's a first base, third base type. Like the Big Stud nickname for Ian Beck. Good contact hitter, not a ton of home run power though. A couple other guys. Actually, there's still 5 other guys who were projected to go in the top 20. So we'll briefly touch on each of them. Actually, only 4 to touch on because one of them was Josh Summers, who we've already talked about. Shortstop Alex Ocampo out of Westminster College. Good contact hitter, good gap power, but a poor competition level. Average-ish speed, not a dynamic defensive infielder for the Tower. Center fielder Pat Lynn, a high schooler, really good gap power and some home run power. excellent outfield range, although a bit of a rag arm, and even when he tracks the ball down, definitely going to not necessarily get his glove on it even when his legs get him there. Second baseman Jeff Martin, not a great defensive profile, but looks like an outstanding potential contact hitter with decent speed and decent bunting ability. And then shortstop Jalen Dean, college player out of Florida State, projected to go to the Yankees. They went with a catcher, as we talked about. Looks like he could be useful defensively. Probably more of a second baseman than a shortstop. Good speed. Think that the gap power and the home run power could be real interesting. Not going to draw a ton of walks. Only average in terms of his ability to make contact. Don't necessarily have a great track record in this playthrough with first round picks from Florida State, but we probably shouldn't hold that against Mr. Dean. Looking a little more fulsomely at the draft pool now, and we've talked about a fair number of these players, but position player-wise, we'll talk about the 8 guys who have 75 or higher potential. As I noted, we've talked about half of them already. Catcher Jesse Rubinoff looks like he can hit some dingers, kind of an average-ish defensive profile. Probably not the direction that I would go. Second baseman Tim Holmes, not a great defensive player. At 6'2", he could definitely play first base if he really got to 70 contact and 70 home run power with average gap power and eye. That could potentially work as a first base DH type. Center fielder Phil Dingwell, already talked about him. One of the more well-balanced bats in this draft with a potential good glove. Outfield just isn't a huge need for us in the organization, but definitely like Dingwell with his 6'2" height and those infield ratings. He could certainly play first base as well, but he'd be a average-ish kind of first baseman as opposed to an above-average defensive outfielder, particularly at the corners. I think of the 3 guys that we've talked about on this page, certainly like Dingwell better than Holmes or Rubinoff. Ronnie Clifford, shortstop. Really like the range in the arm. The error and the turn double play ratings only average. Don't love the low adaptability and baseball IQ. Think he could be an outstanding contact hitter, and the range in the arm are definitely very attractive traits. Could be a great third baseman. I think the big question is, do you think you're going to be able to develop him to his full potential and perhaps make some unexpected improvements with the low adaptability and baseball IQ? Also don't love the low power and the below average eye. We've talked about 3 of the 4 top-end prospects as far as their potential. We'll review the 3 quickly before moving on to the guy we haven't talked about. Josh Summers, the glove is not ideal, but the bat is pretty interesting, and we like his durability. Don't love that home run power is his below-average trait, but think he is still an interesting player to consider. Could definitely be a DH with that profile. Hate that a guy with 60 infield range might not be a guy we're targeting to be an infielder, but we would definitely need some luck with those error and arm ratings to really feel good about playing him at other places. You know, the below average arm could work at second, but average turning to below average error rating. Certainly not the type of defense we've been trying to put behind our pitching staff in this playthrough. Danny Colon, the potential two-way third baseman, who I don't think we'd even waste any time making him a two-way player. Pretty interesting looking bat. Potentially great contact, as we talked about. The glove is more of a third baseman's glove, which is likely where he'd end up. Could also be a first baseman, and he'd probably be a pretty decent one, although he is right-handed. Troy Durfer, he's the first guy we talked about. Really like the glove, like the durability. The question is just how good we feel about his bat. Like the high loyalty and work ethic. Don't love the low baseball IQ. But he's probably on the short list of guys that I'm thinking about at this point. And the guy that we haven't talked about, Dervi Mahez, listed as a shortstop, outstanding speed, high loyalty, work ethic, and baseball IQ, low financial ambition. Pretty interesting looking bat for an infielder. He's not really a shortstop, but with 50 range, 65 error, and a 75 arm, I think he could be a pretty interesting third baseman. More experienced player, 21 years old, coming out of UCLA. Don't love that the home run power still has some work, but his contact, gap power, and eye aren't too far off major league quality. Really like some of the personality traits, particularly the high work ethic and baseball IQ. That level of speed to go with the good contact and gap power, it's not necessarily your prototypical third baseman profile, but I could definitely see Dervi Mahez as a third baseman for a team for a decade. Great level of competition at UCLA and not looking for a lot of money. I guess before turning to the pitchers, the last thing I want to check on Mahez is maybe the OSA really hates him. No, the OSA sees him as a 80 potential also. I'm a little surprised that he hasn't come up from our scout or as a guy who is going to go a bit higher in the draft yet, but he's definitely intriguing to me. Turning now to the top pitchers available, and although, as I mentioned, we've focused on starting pitching prospects in IAFA the last couple years, this is an area that we've underinvested. We missed out on all the top pitchers in a draft because of my stupidity a season or two ago. So as much as I like some of those position players, not willing to rule out any pitchers. We'll talk about the top 7 prospects here. Closer Tony Rivera. If he could add a third pitch, the stamina is a borderline starting stamina. I think the stuff and the movement could both be great. Some definite personality quirks, but I think he can throw over 100 miles an hour. Don't see myself taking a high school reliever in the first round, but Tony Rivera, if he lasts for a while, could be an interesting option to consider. Starting pitcher Robbie Harnden, 18-year-old out of Livonia, Michigan. Potential 4-pitch arsenal, but it's going to require a changeup developing as well as that screwball coming along. I think his stuff, his movement and control could all be above average. Don't know that the ceiling is quite high enough for me to view him as a potential first rounder. Closer Brent Slayer Hall, reliever. Again, a guy who, if he added a third pitch, could become a starter, but that lack of control and a lot of work and a lot of luck to potentially turn him in a starter makes Slayer a no-go for me in the first round. We did already talk about Victor Esquivel with the enhanced arsenal that he potentially has, the outstanding stamina and holding on runners, high adaptability, and stuff and movement that we think have a bit more potential than Robbie Harnden. Definitely like Esquivel better than him. Josh Joss, dandy. ground ball pitcher who we think can throw in triple digits, some very positive personality traits with the high adaptability and work ethic. He's going to want to get paid down the line, decent stamina, potential 4-pitch arsenal. Think that his stuff can be outstanding with well above average movement. The control, the potential issue. Looking for above slot at $8 million, but certainly a high-end prospect. Given their personalities and given the difference in the money they're looking for, I think I'd probably lean towards Esquivel as a little bit better value, but a 6'4" righty who we also have high scouting accuracy on is definitely an interesting guy to consider. Jeff Murphy, closing prospect, like the stamina. If he added another pitch, he looks like he could be absolutely outstanding. The low adaptability, work ethic, and baseball IQ. The fact that he makes poor decisions and always invests the minimum make him a red flag to me as far as his personality traits. Alice Scare, Johnny Lasagna, really, guys? Mitchell, another relief prospect. Enough stamina to become a starter if he were to add another pitch. Think that his stuff could be absolutely filthy. Think he can get to 100 miles an hour. I don't know that with a first-round pick, though, I'm going to take a project whose potential to become a starter is almost entirely based on picking up another pitch in the development lab. A couple of higher-end college guys we'll talk about, at least in terms of thinking about it. Matt Stone, closer out of UVA. Trying to have a good track record with UVA, too, with the recent offer we made to Mr. Stone. Don't love the personality, low leadership, adaptability, and work ethic. To me, that's enough to rule him out as a first-rounder. Matt Farnsley out of Oregon. Looks like the control for him is going to be a massive issue, so not a direction we would go. Starting pitching prospect, Travis Grubb out of Lewis Clark State College, so only a fair competition level for him. Does have ground ball tendencies, think he can get into the mid-90s, outstanding stamina, high adaptability. The issue is he's a 2-pitch pitcher right now at the age of 22. Going to need that changeup or splitter to develop to really be a starter. Stuff in his movement aren't far off major league quality. The control is a potential concern, however. And I guess while we're looking at the college guys, might as well touch on a couple others. Brett Bradley, 21-year-old out of Wake Forest. Looks like a solid starting prospect. Only going to get to the low 90s in terms of his velocity, but someone to certainly consider. David Edwards, another starting pitching prospect out of Creighton. The personality there definitely has some red flags to me, although he's not looking for a ton of money. Doug Ford, closer prospect out of Penn State, Greater Allegheny. Think the stuff could be incredible, but a poor competition level for him there. And then the last college starter that we'll talk about, Rich Hannon out of Southern Illinois. Listed as a starter, ground ball pitcher who can throw triple digits. Going to need to add another pitch to that curve and the cutter to really be a professional starting pitcher, however. So as I think about the draft pool, Cologne, Dufour, Mahez, Summers, Clifford, and Dingwell are probably the 6 position players I, at least initially, am most interested in. Not that that can't change. Pitching-wise, Esquivel and Joss, I think, are 2 very interesting options to consider. Don't necessarily know that I'd go for any of the college players right here. Just seems a little reachy given their skill sets and the fact that most of them have either a personality quirk or a lack of pitches or a lack of control that really bother me. And as I noted, we've got the 28th pick overall, the 4th supplemental pick, which will be 38th overall, and then we've got the 27th pick in the second round this year. So 2 picks in the near term and a third pick that's not too far away. When I look at the mock draft, pretty much everyone that we're interested in is expected to go pretty much by the time we're making our third pick. So it's not inconceivable. We could end up with 3, maybe 4 if we get really lucky of the 8 players that I'm talking about. Realistically, though, that number is probably going to be 2 or 3. And hopefully if we have a good strategy, maybe we can end up with 3 of the guys that we're going to talk about shortly. And again, this isn't a list of definite players I'm going to draft. I haven't really spent any time with it until talking it through with you over these past 10 or 15 minutes, however long it's been at this point. So I'm going to spend some more time offline looking at some other players, and I'm guessing there will be some who I didn't mention that the Worldwide Scouting Department may want me to consider more fulsomely as well. But looking at the mock draft, if we were to go with the well-balanced bat of Phil Dingwell, the $2.6 million is below slot at this point. Like the glove, and think that he is one of the more well-balanced and higher-end bats. He was projected to go 7th overall to the Braves. So presumably if we want Dingwell, now is the time to speak now or forever hold our peace. Similar situation with the shortstop Josh Summers, who's projected to go 16th overall to the Phillies. Like the durability, like the bat, despite the lack of power, a little bit over slot at this point, but we could afford him. Don't love that he's a man, essentially, without a position. I tend to think I'd probably end up going in a different direction, but the left-handed hitting Summers, if we're going to take him, now is probably the time to do it. Troy Durfer, or Doofer, I keep adding an extra R in there. Troy Doofer, the shortstop out of Milwaukee, junior college sophomore. Like the durability, really like the glove. The question to me with Doofer is the bat and the lack of baseball IQ. Probably not ideal for your shortstop. Poor competition level, a bit of a concern as well. But Doofer expected to go with the 27th pick in the draft. So if we want him, now is probably our time. And speaking of our time, the guy that was projected to us here at the 28th pick is Danny Colon. Talked about him, a two-way guy who's really not good cost compared to slot at $2.4 million. Really good contact hitter, kind of average-ish at everything else. The glove doesn't excite me, but it is a third base type glove. He could also play first for us as well. So 4 of the players that we're most interested in expected to go by this pick here. So again, if we want Dingwell, Summers, Doofer, or Cologne, probably need to go get them right now. Can potentially be a little more strategic with some of the other guys. Shortstop Ronnie Clifford projected to go in the second round with the 9th pick to the Marlins. Talked about him, really like the 70 range and the 70 arm. I think he could be an outstanding defensive third baseman. Don't love the low adaptability and baseball intelligence, but a potentially very interesting contact hitter. The guy that I am particularly intrigued by Derby Mahez out of UCLA, projected to go with the 11th pick in the second round. As I said, everything I look at with Mahez kind of shows as a guy who I think could be a very good major league third baseman for many years. Would love if the infield range was higher, given that he's a hard worker. Maybe we can get lucky and get the range to be above average, but everything else about him defensively is pretty ideal for a third baseman. Like the personality, like the speed, and think that the bat is potentially pretty interesting as well. And he's a guy who could be potentially helping us in the not-too-distant future. Faced great competition at UCLA, and his bonus demand is way below slot. Not that that should be a determining factor for who we potentially select. The two pitchers are projected to go later in the second round. Victor Esquivel, who we talked about, projected to go 18th in the second round to the Yankees. As we have seen in recent drafts, it feels like the pitchers are a bit underestimated, and I've found they tend to go somewhat earlier than projected. But Blade Esquivel, at least according to the mock draft, is a guy we could potentially wait on a little bit. And we could say the same thing about the expensive high schooler looking for $8 million, Josh Joss, projected to go 30th overall in the second round. Really like the profile here. I mean, the fact that he's an 18-year-old with a fastball that's major league quality and a changeup, sinker, and splitter that have had at least some level of development is very positive. That $8 million price tag for us this year may be a bit difficult to justify. But again, if we go really cheap with our early picks, maybe as a second rounder, we could swing it if he's still on the board. So some very interesting decisions ahead of us. As I mentioned, I'm going to spend a lot more time offline investigating some of the other options that might be available. But there's guys that I like. I think if I had to make a pick this second, which fortunately I don't have to do, I'd probably be inclined to go with Derby Mahez. If I'm thinking about just pure value in trying to maximize the class and rolling the dice a little bit, maybe we take Phil Dingwell, who is projected to go 7th overall right now. Hope that Mahez lasts to us to our supplemental pick in 10 additional picks. But I kind of like Mahez so much that I don't know that I actually do that. I think if I were to have to make the decision right this moment, I would take Derby Mahez with our regular first round pick. I'd hope like heck that Phil Dingwell fell to us with the second supplemental pick. I don't really think he will, but I think I like Mahez better than Dingwell, and I think he fits our what we need better. So I guess I would go Mahez with our first pick, and then I probably would go with the starting pitcher, Victor Blade Esquivel, with the supplemental pick if he were available. But lots of time for me to think about that, and hopefully lots of time for the worldwide scouting department to give us some ideas. Just so you know, it is the weekend as I'm doing this. It's Saturday morning as I'm finishing up this episode, and we'll be posting it. Probably only going to have about 12 hours to give feedback. It's possible I do the follow-up episode where I do the draft late on Saturday night. So no guarantees that there will be more than 12 hours to get feedback for those of you who want to provide it. But it's also conceivable that the next episode slides till Sunday morning, but just don't want to make any promises there. But Our Rockies continue to play reasonably well. First place in the NL West, and I think we've got some real interesting options ahead of us in the draft. And also, as we talked about earlier in the episode, some help hopefully coming from the farm system in the not too distant future. So I like the way that we're positioned, and until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.